My fantastic friend Wayne has 3D printed us some dinosaurs. So we've let that gelatin sit for a little while now. We're going to take it out of the fridge and see how well it's set.
Exit on the left in the direction of travel.
Look at that. That is touching the end on that side. That is touching the end on that side. Pure guess. Pure guesswork. I've been struggling to get the filming set up right for this bit, but I think we've found it. Stegosaurus on a ladder with the phone. Perfect. So here we're going to be lining our tray with aluminium foil. We're going to use that in case the agar leaks through the cornstarch and sticks to the bottom like it did in the other experiments we just saw. I'm also about to grab 3 strips of baking paper. That'll again be really helpful if we're trying to lift out a huge block of flour that's stuck together. So I've pre-assembled this with 3 strips of baking paper doubled over and a bit of tape. Now this is the corn flour we used previously. I'm going to use this as our base layer. And then I'm going to use fresh flour to be the bits that actually contact our dinosaurs. Overall, our experiments in this series used 11 500 gram bags of flour, 16 300 gram boxes of flour, to a total of 10.3 kilograms. Obviously, if you're doing this at home, and I do recommend you give this a go at home because it is a fun experiment, you can just use an aluminium tray, a little bit of corn flour, and a toy that you have around the house. And as you'll see in a bit, we're also going to line this with alfoil over the top of the corn flour. But for now, we've made a great first impression. Now, we're working with agar once again. This is 4.5 litres of water with 3 packets of agar and a healthy splash of blue food dye. Now, you may notice when you look at lollies that not many of them are coloured blue, and that's because there is no way of naturally colouring something blue, at least not something that's cheap and easy to use, so you have to use artificial colours. A lot of lolly manufacturers, and me normally when I'm cooking, would avoid using artificial colours, not because they're evil and scary, but because some people are allergic to them. On the other hand, blue is very cool, and I am nothing if not cool and trendy, so I'm using blue as my dye today, knowing full well that I don't have any allergies and I'll be the only one eating it.
The history of colours and flavours in lollies is very interesting, and I won't have enough time to get into it properly in this series, but let me just share one fact with you. When starch moguls were first invented in the 1800s, it was a relatively new idea to a lot of people to have flavoured lollies. Lollies up till that point had been sugar candy, which came from the Arabic sukkar kandi, and originally from kanda shakara, which is Sanskrit. It literally just meant a piece of sugar that had been boiled and crystallized. It's just sugar that's unflavored. When they decided they would do penny candies in America, they decided they were going to color and flavor them. And the exciting new colors and flavors they came up with included pineapple, peppermint, and almond, which were made with sulfuric acid, turpentine, and nitrobenzene, while the colors included green, yellow, red, and white, which were made with copper, lead, mercury, and arsenic. Cheaper candy was bulked up with chalk and plaster. So the lollies that people used to have weren't so much tasty as they were incredibly poisonous. One of the amazing things about living 100 years later is that no matter how badly I stuff up making these lollies, I'm fairly certain I'm not going to poison myself.
God. It's not disappearing into the box, so that's cool.
So we're going to let this sit overnight, but before we entirely walk away, I've been lent some lovely dinosaur-shaped silicon molds, which I'm going to fill up with the remaining agar, and we're going to test both of those.
So it's been nearly 24 hours, and here is what our mix looks like in a saucepan. And you can see it is quite solid. It's very firm. That's just coming out as one layer. Looks a bit like a frisbee. I'm going to try and remove this in one piece. But again, it comes out as one big chunk. Bit slippery. See, it's not even making much of a dent there. And now I can use this as a bowling ball. Look at these. So what I have done in the past to flip it is I've basically covered the mold and flipped it over like that. I'm actually going to practice not doing that for the big one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. I'm very curious about how these features, which look kind of ghoulish, will actually fill out as features on the dinosaurs. I've never used these molds before. These were lent to me. Very keen to figure out what they're like. Oh, that's great. The great thing about these silicon molds is they can preserve the shape. This is what I wanted to do from the start, really, is I was going to make my own silicon molds, but it's just very expensive to make a silicon mold from scratch. Look at those. That's pretty awesome. Look at that. The glasses have come off, that's okay. It's actually slightly bigger than our model. Now you can see that as part of this mold, this one actually to support the neck, I guess, has like a piece of, well, if it was on a real dinosaur, we'd call it webbing. But obviously this is not meant to be a dinosaur that has a web between its head and its body. It's not a turkey. It's instead there to preserve the shape, but also give us some structural support. Because you can imagine if we didn't have that there, this would be very loose and wobbly. Good looking jelly dinosaurs that are much bigger than you would get in a packet of jelly dinosaurs. Let's look at these. This is the face of victory right here. The squished face of victory. Fantastic success, I think, across the board. Really happy with how these have turned out. Let's see how our big dinosaur has got on. Ooh, okay, that's coming up relatively easily. I'm going to slide my hand into the flour. It's a little cold. Wow, I love that. It's actually preserved. It's stuck to the full shape of the alfoil as we would expect. So it's got these wrinkles in it, but it's not because this has a wrinkled surface, it's because that has a wrinkled surface. This over here. What we were going for here was not perfect accuracy in the leathering, because obviously if we wanted perfect accuracy in the leathering, we took a much better impression when we just pushed that straight into the corn flour. So having proven that this method works, I'm very happy with this half, but of course, it's only half. Might actually grab another bit of our foil. That looks so much like the Brontosaurus that we have over here that's hiding behind my other camera stand. This one here doesn't actually look as much like it, but is really quite thick and sturdy. Having one that's thick and sturdy and one that is more accurately molded but a little weaker at points is a great combination, because what we can do is we can take the sturdy one, and then when we attach the one with more details, we'll have one that hopefully has the best of both worlds. I'm going to carve it down just a little bit, while at the same time making sure that we keep its core strength. I'm very keen to figure out how this goes. Future Justin, take it away.
So it's time for our final cooking segment. We're working with a different kind of agar. I found a kind of agar we hadn't worked with for our final segment. I've heard it referred to as agar sticks, but I like to think of it as agar noodles. We're essentially soaking this in water in the same way that we did with our gelatin leaves all those episodes ago.
They're wet, but not particularly sticky just yet. Kind of soft. They're a bit like pipe cleaners.
We're soaking them in cold water to get them soft, and then we'll cook them on the stove for a little while. So now those are on the stove, and what we're going to be practicing on is these agar dinosaurs that we've already made. We're going to be sticking them together using some of our potential agar glue. And we're going to be leaving them to set for about half an hour, so the whole thing will be going for about an hour overall as an experiment. And we're just going to let those sit there. I don't know if you can see them set in real time. It's a curious thing about these time lapses. I'm never quite certain if I can. I feel like I'm spotting things, but maybe I'm not.
So this one took a bit of time to stick together. I had to put on a couple of layers. As you can see, I've also dripped some around the edge there. I mean, actually, that still is sticking together pretty well. With these, because they're not made to be two even halves, this one has a face on this end, and then this one also has a face on this end. I like that it stands up. It's sticking together. This is doing pretty much what I wanted it to do. Finally, push me, pull you. Because of the base here, they stand up on their own. That appears to work. So I reckon this works as glue. We can pretty confidently use this to stick our two halves together.
So here we're just going to flip this over and then use the glue we've just made to stick our pink half onto our blue half. Trying to be fairly even with the glue. We want to put enough that's going to stick, but not so much that there's too much of a gap between the two halves and they don't get a proper seal. And once we've done that, we're going to carve the two halves down and try to make them more accurate and realistic, as much as we can make our jelly dinosaur realistic. We're just putting a little bit of glue along these edges. At some point, part of the tail of the pink half came off, so that weight is going to have to be supported entirely by the blue half of the dinosaur. Hopefully that's not going to cause us any structural problems. So we're just going to carve down some of the jelly on the neck. We have some hanging webbing here. And then we're going to move on to carving down the head, which on a real Brontosaurus would have been more like a duck's head or a horse's head, proportional to the size of their body. Of course, we like toys that have big eyes and big faces because we relate to people with faces.
We're going to go for the thinner, closer to a horse kind of leg.
And those are those 4 toes and a spike.
Love those toes. I realize we're stuck the feet together.
But why stick to that? We want to go for the most realistic possible model, and the most realistic possible model has to have the racing stripe that all Brontosauruses, I think, are known for having had, as well as the cool claws that they used for hunting their prey of leaves, but like really scary, dangerous leaves. And then we've added some eyes because they're the windows to the soul. So we're going to leave this overnight, and then we're going to flip it and decorate the other side.
Let's just go. Wow. Let's just go. Wow. Let's just go. Wow. Let's just go. Wow. Oh no, the neck. Oh no. Oh, it's so close.
Well, how would we say that went? If only we had some way to assess that.
I want it to be big. I want it to be sturdy. I don't want it to fall apart. Relatively accurate. And I want you to be able to make one at home.
I think we have to agree that it was big. Sturdy, I don't think we can claim. It did fall apart very dramatically. Accurate? Obviously, it wasn't as accurate as we wanted it to be, but I still think it's more accurate than a standard lolly that you would get in a packet. We put a lot of effort into making it have better proportions. The legs aren't stuck together. There are 4 of them. I think we've nailed it. And what about whether you can make one at home? Well, that's not actually one that I can answer. I think that's one for you. I would love for you to give this a go. For this experiment, you'll need some sort of tray. I've used an aluminium grilling tray because you can just empty it out and then recycle it when you're done. You'll need either cornstarch, which in Australia you can buy as corn flour, provided it's not fortified with wheat, or you can use regular flour and use a barrier of aluminium foil. You'll need either agar or gelatin, depending on how good your fridge and freezer are. And you'll need a toy that you have around the house and you don't mind the idea of eating.
Hello, my name is Justin and I produce a magazine called Neptune Today. It's also behind the YouTube channel that I've created for this web series. Thank you so much for watching Terrible Lizards, and to the folks that support me on Patreon and support this magazine. It's a real thing. It's made of paper. Ooh. It has other pages too, but I didn't do a very good riffle because I'm holding it. But yeah, if you want a copy, get in touch. And if not, thank you so much for supporting us on Patreon and allowing me to spend your money on dinosaur toys and agar. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to do that, jump over to patreon.com to figure it out. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this and you know someone that you think will like this, then please put it in front of them. And have a lovely day.